Thank you very much for meeting with me.
Thank you.
Can you please introduce yourself?
Sure, my name is Caitlin Warbelow, and I'm the violinist with Come From Away.
Can you tell me about your background? When did you start playing?
I started playing violin when I was 3. I'm from Alaska originally, Fairbanks, Alaska, and my mom started me playing classical violin. So it wasn't until I was maybe 5 or 6 that I started doing a bit of fiddle, and then I did both styles throughout my childhood.
And how did you hear about Come From Away?
I was recommended for the job. Come From Away did one run in La Jolla, California, with a different fiddle player, and then they needed a new person, and so I was recommended by a few people. And actually, it's a funny story because when I was contacted by Ian, the music director, he told me the dates, and I was supposed to be traveling at that time in Morocco on a vacation, and so I said no to the gig. And then Ian said to me, well, you know, I think you should think about this. I think it's a special project. You know, you might want to consider whether you want to do it. It might go to Broadway. And if you do want to do it, we'll take care of the change fees for your tickets. So I thought about it some more and decided to do it. So I'm glad that I didn't pass it up.
And did you have to audition for this?
No, I didn't. All Broadway jobs are pretty much not done through audition. It's the system that we have in the union is that most or all of the jobs are by word of mouth or reputation or recommendation. So in the modern age, I think what people do is they often go on YouTube and watch videos of people as kind of an audition. I don't know if they're allowed to do that, but that's what they do.
And what is it like to play on this show?
It's pretty cool. So the first performances I did were in Seattle with the show, and I was coming from a festival in Ireland, a folk festival, the Ennis Trad Fest. And Irish music is it's very free form. You know, we don't have a union, and we don't have rules about things. We just get together and play together. And so I was coming from like a top-notch Irish music festival where the music was the best in the world, but there were no rules or regulations, you know. And I got on a plane from there, just completely exhausted, having stayed up all night for 3 nights playing music. Got on a plane, flew straight from London over to Seattle, and went right from the airport to my hotel, dropped my stuff off, went right to the theater, and started rehearsals. And it was like stepping between 2 worlds that could not be farther apart, because it was the folk music world where there's, you know, no rules, but everybody knows how to act without knowing the rules, and then you go to the union-based theater world where everything is rules. That, you know, you have to do everything exactly as you're told. There's a extreme hierarchy of people who are in charge, and I remember that feeling of making that step overnight as just being so weird for me as a trad musician. But I also grew up playing classical music, so I know about that world, and so it was easy for me to kind of get into that. And then once it started going, just seeing the audience reaction to the show every night, and you know, feeling the emotions myself and also off of the audience was just pretty spectacular. So, and it continues to be a very cool experience.
Is it your first Broadway show?
It's my first show that I have we call it having a full-time job on. I've subbed in the past, which has also been fun, but this show, since it's on stage, is pretty cool. So we don't have to be in the pit, you know, wearing black.
And did you have to learn like choreography? Because you stand
Yes.
on the chairs and everything.
Yeah, we did. That all happened in Seattle. There's a few people in the band who were there since the beginning. I, like I said, joined in the second run of it in Seattle. And how many people are there from there? 5 or 6 or something. But we all learned our choreography there, and I would say that the musicians are generally like kind of awkward on stage. I certainly am, and we had to be told a lot to, like, you know, move around, don't be so stationary, smile, interact with the audience. We're not used to doing that. We like to sit in the back of the room and just, you know, be musicians. It's funny if you go to an event where Come From Away, the cast and band are at, the actors will all be out like working the room, and the musicians every time will be in a corner, like huddled in a corner, not talking to anybody, because that's just what we're used to doing. But now we've been doing this for 2 years. We've loosened up on stage. And we all know each other so well now. We can kind of just play like we're a family.
What is it like to do it like 8 times a week?
I find it hard to do, especially coming from the background that I'm not from the theater background. I never intended to be doing a show like this. And I also do a lot of my own entrepreneurial stuff. I've worked one office job in my life, which I quit because I wasn't cut out for it. So doing the same thing every day has certainly for me been a little bit like mentally difficult. But the good thing is that the musicians can sub out, as you probably know. So we can sub out quite a bit. We have very lenient subbing rules, and I certainly take advantage of that, and I've maintained my other projects. And for me, that's how I kind of keep my sanity with playing the show every day. And it doesn't have to do with boredom at all. People say, like, do you get bored? It's not boredom. It's just it's repetitious, you know, and anything could be the best thing in the world. You do it every day, you're gonna, you know, it's gonna be repetitious. So that's how I would describe it.
What do you think is the most common misconception about being a musician on a Broadway musical?
Oh man, I don't know, but from the people, like my family and friends who have talked to me about it, I guess there's two things. One thing isn't really a misconception, but the most common question I get asked is how long, or they say, when does it end? Like, when will it go until? Because I want to get tickets before it ends. And I have to tell them, like, we don't know. We could go on for years, or it could end next week. It could literally end next week if they don't have to give us very much notice. So, so people just kind of can't really wrap their mind around it. And me too. It's hard for me to wrap my mind around the idea of, like, I could know what I'm doing for the next many years, or I could not know next week. So that's one thing. And the other thing that people say to me is things about, like, oh, it must be so fun to be famous, or it must be so fun to, you know, be on the stage and, you know, people greeting you at the stage door. And I just tell them, like, we're just musicians. We're definitely not famous, even though we're on the stage. When we leave the stage door, people usually don't recognize us or anything. And I certainly don't feel at all like any of us have gotten a big head from playing the show. Like, we just come in, this is our job. It feels like a job. It doesn't feel like anything fancier than you go to work and you go home. So yeah, it's just what we do.
Is it what you expected?
Gosh, I don't know what I expected. I had so little time to accept the job. I think I accepted it 3 or 4 weeks before it started, and I was busy straight up to the date that we started with other things. I didn't have time to think about what was going to happen. I think probably the most surprising thing to me, which I should have expected, I guess, is the organization of it, the number of rules, and the fact that everything is governed by the union, and there's a structure, a hierarchy, all that sort of stuff. I'm not used to working within that sort of structure, so I think for me that was the most surprising thing. I wouldn't say it wasn't unexpected, but it was surprising to me how the extent of that, and how we are all, each of us has a tiny little job within this huge entity, right? I'm used to being the one person who does everything in my tiny entity, and this is a little part in a big entity. Other than that, expectations, I have to say, like, I don't think I had any going into it. I think I thought it's another job. It's another job to do.
And do you have to go to university to study music in order to play professionally, or?
Most people do, but I wouldn't say that you have to do that. We have people in our band who didn't go to university for music. I think one, at least, that I can think of. Especially in this show, we have traditional music in the show, as you know, so many or most trad musicians don't go to school to learn to play trad. So especially for this show, I don't think it would be necessary. However, the skills involved in playing in a Broadway show are, in my opinion, very classical. Like you need to know how to read music and follow conductor, and then there's some specific music theater skills that you need to know, like vamp measures and safety measures and stuff like that. So I wouldn't say it's necessary, but most people do.
Is there anything you would like to talk about?
Oh man, gosh. I guess the thing that I've gotten most involved with being in this show is trying. How do I say this? Once I got to Broadway, I realized that there were not very many women playing in Broadway orchestras, and also not very many people of color. It's not a diverse sort of workplace, especially for musicians. And so after I experienced some issues that had to do specifically with gender, like hair and makeup and some dressing room stuff and all sorts of things, I started getting into kind of an activism role in looking into why those things happen and how can we make it better in the future. So that's been something that I've been very passionate about working on this show, is trying to help people who are already involved, and also to encourage people who are coming into the scene to know how to become a Broadway musician. I've had a number of people meet me at the door. Actually, like the only people who ever say hi to me at the door, mostly, are young women violin players. And so I've actually kept in touch with a whole bunch of them, and we have like pen pal relationships. And I'm trying to help them, in their journeys towards trying to become a Broadway musician, because, as I said before, we don't have auditions, so it's very hard to get your foot in the door. And because it tends to be such a kind of white male-dominated industry, my interest in being in this show is also to try to make things better for people in the future. So I think that's kind of my goal, if you could say, in being part of the show.
How do people usually get started? I mean, if there are no auditions and they don't have much experience.
Yeah. This question, it makes me sad to answer it, because I actually had one of these young violinists email me that question. She was in high school. And she just wanted my advice. She said, what are the steps that I would follow to become a musician on Broadway? And I thought about it for like half an hour, and I started writing the email many times and deleted it, and because the answer is there's not a clear path to how you would do that, like there would be to becoming a doctor or becoming a lawyer. You could be the best at what you do and not be assured that you would have, that you could get your foot in the door. So the way it works now is, and what I told her was, the best thing to do is just take any gig that comes across your path and do it well. And meet as many people as you can, make connections, just do a good job at what you do. And if everything works right, then you'll get bigger and better jobs, and eventually it might lead to Broadway. Now, that is a horrible answer to hear if you are like a goal-oriented, what's my next step sort of person. And certainly, like, I wouldn't want to receive that answer if my goal was trying to get to be a Broadway musician, because it leaves a lot to chance, right? And it also has to do a lot with luck, which is a little scary. So I think that's the current answer. Just take all the gigs, do the best you can, meet everybody, network. But what I'd like to see in the future is for there to be a bit more meritocracy to the system, and at least have a way for young musicians to get their name in the hat, or to submit an audition tape, or to even just to make contact with the people who are doing the hiring, so that you have some little way to get your foot in the door and prove that you're good at what you do, and that you could have a career.
Do you think you have to start playing violin early in order to succeed? Like, is there an age restriction?
No. However, violin is I don't say this just because I'm a violinist. It's a pretty hard instrument, and it generally takes people a long time to get to the point where they're up to professional level. I mean, it depends on all sorts of variables, but you know, the general person who starts as an adult is it's hard to get to a professional level, and a lot of the people who are playing professionally did start when they were really tiny, you know, 3 to 5 or that sort of range. But one of the things I do a lot in my life is teach. I teach all ages, but I kind of specialize in teaching adult beginners, and I have to say that people who start as adults and are really into it and really put the time in, you know, within a couple of years can be playing in bars, playing in sessions. And I actually have a session here in New York that's my adult students who most of them started a few years ago, and now every week they go out and play tunes together in a bar. So it's certainly not all is lost sort of situation if you're an adult and you want to play. It might be a little harder than if you wanted to play like whistle or flute or a drum or something like that.
Romano said that it's like 90% hard rock and 10% talent. Would you agree with him?
Yes, I would actually, and especially on this show. Well, I guess I can't say that. I was going to say especially on this show because it has the stage element. There's, you know, a lot of it is how you comport yourself on stage. But that's not actually true. I mean, I think maybe my equation would be like 60%, 40%, something like that. We've had some people come to sub on the show who were great musicians but didn't have as good of stage presence, and they had to work on that, or vice versa. You know, it's harder to find people that are just really perfectly suited for the job when you're on stage. So yeah, you do have to have a little bit of rock and roll in your blood. I think that's true. Or at least some fiddling or something.
Do you have any special traditions or rituals?
I don't think, let's see here. Wow, that's an interesting question too.
I know that actors do this handshake, like we are here.
Yeah. I don't think I have not any like superstitious sort of rituals, but we all get in these routines certainly that we do. Like I put on my makeup in a certain order, and I put on, I have basically like a checklist of stuff that I do. And then, I don't know if any other musicians talk to you about this, but we have funny things that we do on stage. Like on my side of the stage, the left side, Nate is the guitar 2 person. We are both like silly nerds, so we do things like we collect data for every show on how many times one of the actors says no in this certain spot. There's a spot where he goes, no, and every night we count, and we've been collecting the data since the start of the show. And at some point, when we are not lazy, we're going to make a graph of it and present it to the actor. So we do that. We like have silly little things like that we do every show. And I think we didn't do it at the beginning. I think the reason we do it now is because we know the show so well, and we're trying to stave off boredom, right? A way for us to keep ourselves fresh and to keep the show fresh is to keep our minds going in different directions. And so that's what we do. We have a moon, like a kid's light up moon that's on the left side of the stage, and it's a remote controlled moon. So we turn the moon on at various places in the show based on very silly little data points. I mean, it's really silly. You'd have to come down and watch. It's very funny. But yeah, besides that, I'm not very superstitious about performance. I've never have been. So yeah.
The last question.
Sure.
I heard that musicians give names to their instrument.
I'm asked that question so many times, and I have to say I have never given my instrument a name. Other people have tried to name my instrument for me, but I just haven't ever done that. And I also have been asked if I feel like my instrument has a gender, and I don't think of it as having a gender either. I will say that the instrument itself feels to me like a part of my body. If I, for example, if I go on an airplane and I don't have the violin with me, which almost never happens, but if I'm going on a real vacation, I call them violin panic attacks. I literally have tiny little 1-second panic attacks about once every 10 minutes for the first couple hours, because I think that I forgot my violin somewhere because it's not next to me. And it has made me realize how this instrument just, I mean, it's like another arm for me. It's been with me so long. So maybe the answer to your question is, it doesn't have a name because it's part of me. It's not a separate entity. It's really part of me.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
This is another interview.
Excellent.